Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of PodSafe Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and just going to straight out say that I'm really thrilled to have with me as a live guest, Shawn Askinosie, the founder of Askinosie Chocolate. And the reason for our getting together today is that it is 20 years ago this month that I accompanied Shawn on his first bean buying trip to Soconusco in Mexico, and to the Barlovento region of Miranda State in Venezuela. Before we begin, I want to point out to everybody that you can go into the live chat in YouTube or the comments in Facebook and LinkedIn. And if you had like to ask Shawn a question about anything that we bring up during the course of this episode, you can do this. I also want to mention that this episode of PodSafe Chocolate, like every episode of PodSafe Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. And if you're not a member, you can go to the Chocolate Life right now and join. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I want to bring onto stage Shawn, who is just providentially looking away just as I bring him on.
Sorry.
Shawn, it's no. You have nothing to apologize for. I mean, this is a live episode and we're not editing anything, but it's great to see you today. And how are you this morning?
Well, it's great to see you, Clay. I'm super excited about this, and I can't believe it's been 20 years.
You know, I was thinking about that. I mean, this is now the 20th anniversary of my becoming a professional chocolate critic. June of 2001 was when I set out my shingle on the internet. So this is a big year for me. But I want to begin again by just reminding everybody, if anybody has a question for Shawn, they can go into the comments and they can ask the question. And we'll get it up on screen and we'll see about answering it. But Shawn, you know, a lot of work I think has been done. A lot of coverage has been done on, you know, what you did before you got into chocolate and that sort of epiphany that sort of moved you into getting chocolate. But I want to focus on something that happened during the first visit that we made, and we're talking about being in Mexico. And I specifically want to talk about something sort of around. I'm looking off because I want to get a picture up on screen that we're going to preview. It's a little slow, but I want to get this up on screen. So you and I are in a little town called El Triunfo, and right in the Soconusco region of Chiapas state in Mexico. Right, we met in a plane in Houston, flew down to Mexico City, connected in Mexico City to Tuxtla Gutierrez, connected from Tuxtla Gutierrez to Tapachula, and then drove up the coast from Tapachula to a little town called Escuintla. And from Escuintla, we went up into the hills. I hope that's your memory as well. But we're standing here in this cooperative whose name I don't remember, right? And one of the things I remember about this particular visit is that you spoke with the cooperatives about what I think of as a first look contract, which is, can you, Shawn Askinosie and Askinosie Chocolate, pay them a little bit of money up front, right? Right. And so what you can do is when they're ready to bring these beans to harvest, that you have a chance to either buy some of them, all of them, or none of them, right? You just want the first look to be able to purchase it. And if you don't decide to buy any of them, they could sell them to other people. And then a couple of days later, we'll get back to these photos, but I'm going through them. A couple of days later, we're in a cooperative. I believe the area is called La Maroma, right? And we're having this conversation with a farmer who leads the cooperative. His name is Diego, and that's Diego in the background here, right? And you're offering to prepay, but he says, no, I want cash on delivery. So how does that realization that different places have different ideas about what the relationship should be between them as sellers and you as buyers, how did that begin to affect, right, your approach to your business? Because at this time, you're still not making and selling chocolate yet, as I recall.
Good memory. Great memory, as a matter of fact. Let's just rewind the tape a little bit and give some context as to why you were there And we met each other in Ecuador on this trip to the Amazon, and actually met each other just on the phone before that, because I rung you up. That's when people, back in the day when people actually called each other, and asked you about this trip and if you thought it would be something that would be beneficial for me. I'm practicing law, trying cases, and thinking about leaving my law career and starting to make chocolate. And you encouraged me to join the trip, and I did. In fact, I talked to Martin this morning on email because I buy his licorice. They're sitting next to me. And so we met each other on that trip. I was really impressed with I just felt really comfortable around you and the kind of expertise that you had at the time. And so I asked you after that trip if you would accompany me and help me on these first bean buying adventures. And I use that term intentionally. It was an adventure in ways that it isn't quite an adventure anymore. I just got back from my 55th origin trip a few weeks ago to the Philippines. And so I'm a lawyer. I understand international law to some extent, but I felt like I really needed, for lack of a better term, I needed confidence. And so that's why I asked you to join me on the trip. And I'm really glad that I did, because it did exactly what I hoped it would do, that I'd have a thought partner there with me in the middle of this adventure. And struggle. Some of it was kind of a struggle, and it isn't anymore. And so just to have a thought partner and an expert who I could rely on, and that's what I was used to in my law practice. I had a lot of experts that worked with me in cases, and so it was just a natural extension from law to doing this, to saying, hey, I need the best of the best to go with me and help me. And so that's the context for us being in these places in Mexico and Venezuela. And so to get to the answer to your question, this is a great question, because I'm still answering this question 20 years later as I deal with farmers in remote Tanzania, in the Philippines, in Ecuador. And I think if chocolate makers and people who work with this crop, if they stop asking this question that you're asking, then they're going to get in trouble, and they're going to lose sight of quality, and they're going to lose sight of how relationships impact quality. And so the best example I can give is, this was an early lesson in the idea that cocoa farmers are not a monolith. We talk about this equator band, around the globe, and 20 degrees north and south. And actually they live in a lot of similar type places. I mean, you could pick this place up in Venezuela and drop it in fill in the blank other place that you and I have both traveled to around the world, but the people are not the same. Their culture, their tradition, their expectations are not this isn't a monolith. They, like us, have heritage and experience that dictate how they want to do business. And so this early lesson that you just now raise is so important. And thankfully, it didn't just skate by me at the time. And I'm sure that part of the reason it didn't skate by me is because you were there to literally talk about it with me while it's unfolding. And that was just, a priceless opportunity for me to have a thought partner like you, and to be able to discuss that kind of thing while it's happening in real time.
So if I can, so we have our first comment. This is from Mike King at Encore Coffee and Chocolate in Kansas City, Missouri, who says, hey, Shawn, this is just down the road from Springfield, or up the road from Springfield. Love the chocolate. Been a fan since I read about you in The Pitch, 2007, 2008.
Wow.
So
that's
so
nice. I love that.
Yeah, quite some time. And while I've got this picture up on the screen, Shawn, I want to talk about. So this is an adventure called the University of Chocolate. It was organized by this gentleman here. His name is Pierre-Ric Chouard, and people may remember Pierre-Ric from a company called Vintage Chocolates, now Vintage Plantations Chocolates. And over on the left here, just behind you, so here's Shawn, looking very young. Behind him is a gentleman by the name of Steve Lawrence, who at the time was in Portland, and I believe now is in Fredericksburg, Texas, or around there. To his right is Mark Boatwright, who was the founder of a company called Choctaw Ice Cream, doing the first premium single origin ice creams with his partner, Patricia Hinojosa. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of this person. This is Langdon Stevenson, all the way over here on the right, who was there with his partner, Samantha Medell from Australia. Martin Jorgensen, who decided not to get into the chocolate business, but now has this very successful licorice, Lakritz Fabrikan, which is licorice factory, in Scandinavia. I don't know if you know, but I was at ISM in Cologne, Germany in 2018, and I ran into Martin in this huge trade show on purpose. And here I am, and unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the other people who are here. But Shawn, we went. This was taken in a little, I want to say, national park above Otavalo, which is this lake, but it's also got this really, really famous market associated with it. So we're just outside of Quito. We did that one day. This is you, right? Behind you is the Capawari River. We're in southeastern Ecuador, along the Rio Pastaza, which is the border between Ecuador and Peru, right? Yeah. And I just wanted to share this. The gentleman here, his name is Jean-Luc Bastide. He was a tropical agricultural researcher with a specialty in cacao and tree crops generally. And here we are at the Capawi Lodge, right in southeastern Ecuador, and we're talking about what is going to be our schedule for the next several days, which include in-depth dives into fermentation, post-harvest practicing, all these kinds of stuff having to do with cacao. And so I just wanted to give people sort of this little check into the history. And Shawn.
And then we took a test. We took a test and we had to pass it. That's right. We went back to Quito, stayed at a place called the Café Cultura, and we took a test before that may be another trip. We may have taken the test here. But, for example, I remember we're getting out, or we're trying to get out, and then all of a sudden it's raining and it's a dirt airstrip. And it's like, oh, is the plane going to be able to land? Is the plane going to be able to take off? Is the plane going to be able to land? And so we're just sort of for a day or so trying to figure out what it is that's going on. But do you have any special memories about this part of this trip? I do.
Okay. Could you please share?
The backdrop here and our little lodge was right there. And the thing I remember that was really striking to me about this trip and that setting in particular in that place was this was my first experience of, and I don't recall if it was really primary forest, but I think it was. And that's not common. And the sounds, the smells, so I have a distinct memory of feeling that I was in a place that was much bigger than me. I had no control over it. I wouldn't be able to find my way anywhere in that spot. It was dense jungle. And I just remember feeling this kind of awareness of creation, really. It was a really overwhelming, powerful experience, especially waking up in the morning and hearing the howler monkeys, and it had quite an impact on me just to feel like I was in a place that I really just had no control. I came from a career of all about control, and so to be there and to have that experience was something I won't forget.
And I want to jump from that because, I think it's really important for people to get an understanding of something that you said. I'm going to jump ahead through a couple of photographs. I just want to let people know, here is Shawn waiting on a bench. We're waiting for a ride to leave Escuintla to go back to Tapachula, because we have to go from Escuintla to Tapachula to Tuxtla to Mexico City, right, to Houston or Dallas to catch a flight to Caracas. This is all happening on one day. And here
We
we are
went to
waiting to
Panama
get
in there
picked up.
somewhere. We landed in Panama at one point, didn't we?
Did we have to connect through Panama?
I thought maybe we did, but I don't
right. But
yeah.
all I remember about
Anyway.
this is that the flight from Tuxtla to Mexico City was horribly delayed. And I have a memory of like at what, 8,000 feet, which is where or 5,000 feet, which is Mexico, running from one end of the terminal in Mexico City from the local airline all the way to Pan Am or American, right at the other end, so that we didn't miss our flights. I mean, I have like, a real heart stopping the day. Again, here we are back in El Triunfo. But I wanted to share this photo, number one, because I think it, for me, it is a signal of what I think about when I think about direct trade when it comes to cocoa, right? Direct trade, and you mentioned it, it is about the establishment of the relationship that you have with the farmers and the communities from whom you are purchasing. When you had your first thoughts about starting up, was this aspect of things, right, in your mind, or is it something that evolved through the early trips that you took?
It was absolutely in my mind before even the first step in the business. And the reason is because my grandparents were small farmers here in Southwest Missouri, had some cows, chickens, big, huge garden. And after my father died, my brother and I spent a lot of time on their farm, which was about 45 minutes from here, from Springfield, Missouri. And so they had a huge impact on me. They weren't highly educated. They worked really, really hard. They were sweet, kind people. They helped their neighbors and likewise. And they just had a huge impact on me. And so they died before I started the company in their 80s, but their legacy continues to this day to really have maybe the biggest impact on me of anyone, including my parents. And so that's why I wanted to do it. I wanted to honor them by this kind of relationship with farmers.
Right. So did you, so were you thinking about, I mean, the term direct trade is just beginning to sort of percolate up. There was a direct trade association founded, or at least started to be founded by Martin Christie and Maricel Percia, a group around them. But did this language of direct trade appeal to you, or were you thinking about it in different terms?
It did appeal to me, and my awareness of it really sprung up through Intelligentsia Coffee and Doug Zell and Jeff Watts, who started that, back in the 90s, really pioneered direct trade for coffee. And they were friends of mine. And so Jeff was really instrumental in talking to me about that and answering questions for me about that early on. And I just knew that I wanted to pay farmers directly. And so, from the beginning, we started helping them open bank accounts so they could get money, just very basic things. And that's kind of evolved now to where the farmers that we work with are their own exporter of record, which is a big deal. And we've worked with many of them for, 18, 17 years. And so it's a very simple thing to me, and I also knew that I had an aversion to fair trade, labels, third-party certifications, and and that aversion remains to this day. Yeah.
Right. So I want to talk about another thing that I remember, and I'm not precisely sure when we had the conversation, right? But there is an author whose name is Jack Stack, who has a book called A Stake in the Outcome, right? And there are some practices which are described in his book, which you practice in your factory, right? And I believe it underlies part of the way you approach the farmers in the communities that you work with. So can you, talk a little bit about what a stake in the outcome means, I think generally, but to you particularly, and how you go about, incorporating those ideas? Because, from what I can see, it's part of the DNA of corporate culture in Askinosie Chocolate.
The first book that he wrote was called A Great Game of Business. And so if we were to kind of boil this down, it's also referred to often as open book management. And so I have been practicing open book management for more than 30 years, maybe 30 years. And I started taking classes in open book management from Jack Stack's company called The Great Game of Business, which is just one of many companies that he owns, manufacturing companies. And so I did this as a lawyer. I practiced open book management in my law firm. I had lawyers that worked for me and paralegals and administrative assistants. And so it just meant I shared the numbers with everybody in the firm. And then there was an opportunity to pay bonuses and profit shares, essentially based on those numbers, teaching what it means, teaching financial literacy. So it was just, I didn't even think twice about it. I knew that the chocolate factory, we would do the same thing from day one. We would share the numbers, teach what they mean, and share in the outcome. And from the very, very beginning, I knew that in our relationship with the farmers, that we would do the same thing, that we would kind of bring open book management upstream in the supply chain, one rung or one notch. And what that looks like is over the years in all of these bean purchases, when I go meet with farmers again after we've purchased that crop year, we come back and we bring consolidated financials to the farmers that's in their language so they can understand what we're making, how much money we're making, and then distribute a profit share based on that consolidated financial and give them money in addition to the over market price that we're paying for beans. And so that's what it looks like. And nothing fancy. And I remember very distinctly the first profit share on the first bean buy, which was in Ecuador. And we both know, I won't say who, we both know the person, someone from Ecuador who was like, Shawn, are you insane? You can't show them these numbers. The farmers are going to freak at these numbers. Don't do it. And I'm like, well, no, we're doing it. And we did, and we still do. And I will say that, and this has been, with farmers that I've been with for, as I mentioned earlier, a long time. We were very upfront with them when the markets started spiking, 24 months ago ish. I told them, I was like, we're not going to profit. If I'm paying you, $10,500 a metric ton directly to you, we're not profit sharing on this go round. And so we haven't for the last couple of rounds, but we will probably be starting it again. But that's what it looks like. That's what it is. Pay them direct, open our books, share with them. And it's just an expectation. They're like, oh, what, let's see the financials. It's part of my trip when I'm there. And it's just part of how we do business.
Well, let me talk about this in slightly different terms. So one of the challenges that is faced by every farmer who works with an agricultural commodity, right, is that once it leaves the farm, they do not participate in any of the upstream value add, right? They just, when they're done, it's done, right? And if they are lucky and they're part of a cooperative, there might be some premium associated with the work that they're producing that they do share in. And my understanding is you were looking at something like the fair trade floor plus the premium is what you would pay. So there was always a minimum price that you would pay, which was sort of at the upper end of the market for what you were buying. And then there is this profit share component. One of the things that impressed me is, I forget exactly what year it was, but it was in leading up to the publication of your book, right? Is that you sent me a spreadsheet which had all of your bean purchases up until this time. What you paid, what the profit share, I don't remember what all the columns in the spreadsheet is. My copy of your book is in storage. But to the best of my knowledge, when it comes to a specialty chocolate maker which is what you are, that was the first time that anybody ever published this kind of detail into the financials of their bean purchases. I mean, you saw that as a larger part of open book accounting, that you wanted people? So let me not lead you there. I'm not leading you to the answer, right? As
objection, Your Honor.
Objection, leading the witness. But why exactly did you include the table of bean purchases in this book?
Thank you for asking that. I would say too, quite simply, we also put it on our website. So that every year we're putting it on our website. I think we're about ready to put up a new one, because these numbers are audited every year by a Drury University graduate level audit course. So we have students, through the supervision of their accounting professor, auditing our numbers. And, one thing I remember when we put this on our website, we put what we paid to the farmer, what the world market price was, what the fair trade price was. And this is really important, we put what the farm gate price was. That's the real rubber meets the road comparison, is what would the farmers have otherwise received at farm gate at that time or around that time. And so we just put it all on there. And I recall when we started doing this more than 10 years ago, I didn't want to engage a design firm to come up with some fancy infograph. I'm just like, why? Just let people look at the numbers and they can tell whatever story they want to tell themselves. I'm not trying to be, clever about this. I'm just, here are the numbers. Do with it what you will. And I just felt like it was important to put that out there, and just tell it, say what it is. And yes, it's an extension of open book management.
So I think you may be referring to some of my criticisms of the Toni's Chocolonely annual,
God bless
quote unquote fair report.
Okay, look, let me just say this, and I know this is your podcast, not mine.
No.
But here's the thing. I hope that people who are tuning in are not just like, oh, Shawn, why don't you just blow some more hot air in Clay's ear and whisper how great he is to the podcasting audience public. But here's the thing. Let's take this Toni's deal. You have spent hours and hours and hours trying to inform the public, people who want to know, what is the deal with Toni's and companies like them. And oftentimes I feel like you don't get enough credit for the amount of work that you have done to try to help people understand what this is and what it isn't. And I just want to say that, I'm busy, you're busy, but I am so grateful for the work that you've done, because people can go visit your website. They can look in the archives. They can look it up. It's very easy to search for on your website and educate themselves about this and many other topics. And so I just want to say thank you, because, this is important information. It's important that we have people like you who are out there on the trail way ahead of us, turning around and saying, hey guys, this is what this is. You can do what you want with it, but this is what's happening. And then you turn back around on the trail and you're looking at something else. So thanks for doing that.
Well, thank you. It feels like tilting at windmills at times. Last year, or the last report, Toni's reported 240 million euros in sales. And they have a manufacturing relationship with Barry Callebaut, and they have investors, a big company called Verlinvest, which is a major owner of AB InBev, which people may know, right, as one of the largest alcoholic beverage holding companies in the world. They have investments in lots of other places as well. So in some circles, it doesn't make me popular to do this. Somebody has got to go do this, and I will continue to do this. And I do want to point out that, if you are involved in the world of chocolate, right, and especially specialty chocolate, as Shawn is, you should know about a new court case, which is being brought by international rights advocates, Terry Collingsworth. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, in DC District Court, not federal court, district court, which is a consumer protection lawsuit, which is going after the big companies for misleading people in their marketing around sustainability claims associated particularly with child labor and Hark and Engel. So it's going back more than 20 years. So to the point where if you are making claims about sustainability and direct trade and paying farmers, right? If you're a specialty chocolate maker, you're going to have to, if this lawsuit is successful, be open, right? And much more, and I like the word visibility as opposed to transparency. You're going to need to provide a whole lot more visibility into what you're doing to support your claims. And I wanted to highlight what it is that you're doing, Shawn. Another thing that I want to talk about, because I think it's really, really important, is that there is, and we talked about this recently with Philippe Huglar, who is the current president of the AVPA in France, about this modern colonial aspect where I'm from the Great White North, literally and figuratively, using non-PC terms, but I'm from the Great White North, and I'm going to go down to, help these poor cocoa farmers solve all their fermentation problems to produce better cocoa when I know nothing about the science of fermentation. So tell me about how, going to the Philippines and recognizing that there is a challenge associated with the children of the farmers you're working with having lunch at school, and how do you go about solve that problem? And you're going into Tanzania and there are related problems. So how do the other programs that you're involved with, University of Chocolate, things like that, or Chocolate University, and things like that, come from? I think I look at a photo like this, and what I do is I just see sort of an intense amount of listening, right? Much as you didn't want to hear what Diego had to say, much as it was frustrating, I remember being there and hearing that conversation. How important is it to listen to what farmers like Diego, who manages a cooperative, and respond to what it is that they're telling you, right? Rather than saying, I'm here as a savior, which is often the way some people present themselves. So I hope I didn't. Yeah.
No, that's good. This is a really important topic, I think. And it's especially important now. And we're seeing, the price today is like $3,200 a metric ton on the world market. And as many of your listeners know, there's no grade. Oil has grades. There's no grade here. It's cocoa, period. And so when the price was $12,000 a metric ton or $10,000 a metric ton, what we saw in stark terms was a shift in power dynamics, big time, that made me, and I imagine other people like me, really start to evaluate their role in the supply chain, as you said, as the great white northern savior, and to understand their role in the supply chain in ways that they hadn't before. Because look, when the world market price is flat for 50 years at whatever $2,300 a metric ton, it's easy to go to fill in the blank origin and say to farmers, well, what you name the price. What would you like us to pay? Well, how about if we pay you more than that? And, oh, by the way, what if we pay you in advance so that we're essentially giving you an interest-free loan paid for, post-harvest or harvest capital. And we'll pay you the final payment when it reaches the port. And that's easy. You know, that's easy to do. It's easy to incorporate in your margin. Oh, aren't we nice people? Let's just pat ourselves on the back that we're paying more money and well, hey, if you direct trade with farmers, now, if you're working with a broker or a distributor, yeah, you're going to have to examine some power dynamic shift, but not like this. So when I go see farmers that I've known forever, and I mean, you know, some farmers that I've seen more than some of my friends, you know, in person.
Certainly more times than we've met in person.
Yeah, I've seen farmers, you know, more than I've seen you, my friend Clay. And so when the market goes to $8,000 a metric ton, and you're sitting there like we're sitting in this picture, and there's going to be some negotiation in ways that there wasn't before, because it's not so easy anymore. Because if you're a small company, or even, well, if you're even huge, look what's happened to Big Chocolate. They've laid people off because of all of this. They've couched it in as many pleasing terms as they can for their shareholders, but it is what it is. And all of these companies have let people go by the thousands and have reported massive drop in shareholder price. Well, so when you're sitting in a meeting like this, in this picture, you're going to negotiate. That didn't happen before. So when you are the great white savior, and now all of a sudden you're negotiating, you're not so much the savior, you're a buyer. Now you're still on friendly terms, and these are people that you have a relationship with, but you're a buyer. And those terms are going to be often dictated by them, not you, not me. Mm-hmm. So what that does is, it, for me, I can't speak for others, but what this has done for me, it's been an unbelievably humbling and just beautiful opportunity for me to go back to books like Things Fall Apart by Achebe and that trilogy. And I would encourage people, if you haven't read that trilogy, to please go back. This is classic, you know, about novel trilogy about this place in Africa where the European missionaries and ultimately business people and government came to take over their village and basically turn their culture upside down. And so what I'm experiencing is this real deep self-evaluation and reflection about my role in that. So when I show up in let's just take Tanzania, for example. When I show up in Tanzania 16 years ago, they didn't have contracts. They didn't have deadlines. They didn't ferment. So here I am bringing these things like contracts and deadlines and specs, and the beans have to be like this and not that. Well, that creates a whole new framework for them. That's a new dynamic and new paradigm. And so I wonder, you know, about the impact of that. And I think about my impact on their culture. And this isn't just Tanzanian culture, it's tribal culture. The Nyakyusa tribe, which is a huge tribe in Tanzania. And this is a heritage that is deep. And what have I done? Have I done anything that would have that is harmful to that dynamic? Yes, they have more money, but am I making assumptions as an American that they want to, you know, like buy a vacation home or they want a Rolex or something? I don't know. That's not for me I don't know. But what I do know is that the dynamic in all of these cases has shifted. And I love this because it hasn't been like that for hundreds of years. I mean, and it's cool. It's kind of cool. And in some cases, the farmers don't know what to do with it because they've never been in that position. Mm-hmm. And so when we have these programs like Empowered Girls in Tanzania, Enlightened Boys in Tanzania, school lunch programs in the Philippines, I was just there. We have a kindergarten class. We're finishing our third year in a sustainable lunch program where all of the children were severely malnourished. Now all of them are of normal weight and height. And This is for a donor through our Chocolate University Foundation that has supplied food for these kids. And so what I want to do, my goal in these programs is to help naturally, organically. If the farmers and people in the community say they want to try this out and they want to do this, and can we help? Do we have the opportunity to help? And have we built an exit strategy with that so that it's sustainable and it's not just continuing on, and that they can do it on their own? And my goal with this is that as we exit these community development programs, and this is aspirational, so what I'm going to say is it sounds pretty, but it's aspirational and it can be messy. I just think metaphorically, I want to sort of back out of the village with a branch in front, like a little broom in front of me, sweeping away my footprints so that you can't tell I was there. Because you when you go to these places, you're not going to see our logo painted on schools. And I forbid that. I didn't want them honoring us and having ceremonies for us, which they did in the very beginning, like I'm some kind of person to be worshiped or whatever, as coming in to save no, it's you all are the ones that are doing this, not me. And that's harder to do. It's harder to execute. It's harder to manage. It's messy. And then when you do leave, even though you have an agreed upon plan, it can be messy, it can be bumpy, but it's important. It's important to do that. And, we've graduated 11,000 young people from our program and after school program in Tanzania with one employee over the 15 years that we've done it. And I'm really proud of that work, but I also know that I shouldn't get lost in that. And I need to remember Achebe's work in that, I use these terms in the book, and I talk about this a lot. And that I talk about mutuality and kinship. Well, as I said at the outset of the answer to this question, that's really easy when you have all of the power. You can talk about mutuality and isn't that pretty? And well, when you don't have the power, that's the question. Can you still talk about that? Are you still in it? Are you still really are you still expressing mutuality and kinship? That's the real test. That's why this whole price thing has been just a ride, man. It has been just a wild buck and bronco of a ride, and we've navigated our way through it. It's very challenging for cash flow for us and everyone else. But man, I've learned a lot. Oh my goodness. I wouldn't have traded it.
Shawn, I want to say that I recognize this. What I fear, right, is that 99% of all the other entities, right, who are in the cocoa to chocolate supply chain have not learned a thing, right? That, there was no systemic investment in cocoa farms and cocoa farmers when we had a lot of money, right, to address the root causes of rural poverty and farming communities, right? And, the supply chain is just as fragile to the next major weather event as it was, which is one of the contributing factors 2 years ago. And it's real challenge. But let's bring it a little bit closer to home. We can talk about Tablea, right, as part of the underlying economic driver originally that went on to the lunch program in the Philippines and golden rice in Tanzania, and how that went. But let's bring it closer to home to Springfield, Missouri. You have this factory, and it's in an area that not down the street's a homeless shelter, and you're connected through one way or another to Drury University. So how this represents? So how do you incorporate the community, the local community, into what you're doing, more than just selling them chocolate, right? And how important has that partnership with Drury been in terms of the larger goals that you've been pursuing?
We started the first month that we sold our first chocolate bar. We started Chocolate University by engaging in the school in our neighborhood that many of the kids at the homeless shelter attended. That homeless shelter has since moved, and that homeless community has been dispersed throughout the community. And I but it was 1 block away. And, you know, we wanted to engage. We wanted to engage in those relationships and inspire the young people that we encountered that, number one, small business can be a force for good in the world. And number two, that there's a world beyond their own. And so we started this in elementary school, then we started a middle school program and then a high school program. And Drury partnered with us in the high school program in 2009 to start our first program first business immersion program in 2010. And that was going to Tanzania. And we've been doing this for now 15 years. And this is one of the biggest things that we do. And it's for kids in Southwest Missouri. It's not nationwide, and it's a way we engage in our community. And this is one of the coolest experiences that I have had. And it works like this. I am still in touch with many of the now not kids, but adults that went in 2010. One of our students that went in 2012 left Springfield and had a, you know, kind of a tough upbringing, got a full ride to Yale, moved to Austin. He's now on our board of directors. One of our students who went in 2010 went to study Arabic, and she's a graduate student, or she has a graduate degree in Arabic studies. She's now on our board of directors. What a full circle, cool thing to say, I've been in this chocolate business, and now these young people that were in high school that I took to meet farmers and to like say, hey, here's another part of the world. Now they're on our board of our nonprofit. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. And to hear these students, and another one is a tax lawyer in Nashville now. He went with us in 2010, and he went with us as an adult traveler on the last trip. I mean, this is kind of like, I often just tell myself, it's not going to get any better. Not that I want to like walk away from the microphone and have a heart attack and die, but if I did, it would, right. This, what I'm telling you now would be one of the measures of success of my business, to have a young person go do this from our community, and then to say out into the world, not only that they want to spend time to help other young people have this opportunity, but to just say, hey, this 2-week and semester-long experience really changed me, and it changed how I view the world. It's kind of a Trojan horse. We bill it as a business immersion program, but we have students who debrief at night when we're there on the ground, who are, you know, in tears because they don't understand why people are being so kind to them and why farmers are so welcoming and so hospitable, and they can't have words to describe it. And so they just cry. This is how we contribute to Springfield. This is how we contribute to the community. I say all the time about our business, you know, it's not about the chocolate, it's about the chocolate. And that's what I mean. So it's not about the chocolate. It's about all this other stuff that we've been talking about that I absolutely love. On the other hand, it is about the chocolate. I'll never forget, we were flying back from our Ecuador trip, and you gave me, we were sitting next to each other on the plane, and you had a very special chocolate bar from Domori, and you were letting me taste it. And I was just, it was like otherworldly. I don't, even to this, I've been doing this now for, gosh, more than 20 years. I don't know that much about, I mean, maybe this, I'm giving this away, about, I'm not an expert in chocolate tasting like you are, but man, that was awesome. I love that chocolate that you gave me, and you knew the story behind it. And it was, you know, not something you could just go get anywhere. I don't remember which Domori bar it was, but I'm like, that is amazing. I want to make amazing tasting chocolate. And so it is about the chocolate, but it's not about the chocolate. And that's what we live by. And I hope that's our legacy. But
yeah,
before we, I know we only have a little bit of time left. And one thing I wanted to talk about in this, episode, this podcast with you, is one of the photographs that you had. It was kind of a grainy picture that you had of me talking on the phone in I think it was probably in Escuintla. And
no, actually that's in Venezuela.
Was it? Okay.
It's in Venezuela.
What it brought to mind.
So we're in Rio Chico. Rio Chico is where we are.
I
right?
remember that it was
At an internet cafe. At an internet cafe.
yeah. Okay. So
So this photo here.
I love this picture. If you could actually send me I'd like
I'll
that,
send you
because
the full res version.
here's what I want to ask you about that picture.
Sure.
So when you and I went on this trip and when we were in Ecuador, yes, we were younger and we can laugh about that, but and yes, traveling like that, not for you, but for me, that was new. I'd lived in Japan for a year in college. I went to work in the American Embassy in Thailand after my freshman year of college. So when I was 19, I was living in Thailand. So I had some experience, but this is true. Back then, it seemed it was quite an adventure. It was hard to get to the place. It was hard to fly to the place. Once you flew to the place to have ground travel was hard to get places, to get from A to B. And once you were there, you weren't staying in super awesome, lovely places. We didn't have access to the internet. We needed to walk to a place like this. And so what I wanted to ask you about is, what do you think about that? Like, I still love traveling, man. I just got back from the Philippines. I went by myself. I do that all the time. I'm planning my other trips. I still love it. I love airports. I love the schedule, but it's not quite the same adventure. And I'm also thinking it's not because I've done it so many times. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the Instagramification of the world, especially the developing world? And do you see it that way, or am I off base here?
Well, so there are a couple of, thank you for, turning it around and focusing it on me. So number one is, I am not a fan of the travel portion of it, right? So once I'm on the ground in a place I've never been before, the adventure begins, right? And I have only one item in my bucket list. I mean, I have a lot of bucket list items, right? That people would go, oh my gosh, you've done all these wonderful things. I have one item in my bucket list, which is to visit every country in the world where cocoa is grown commercially. And I'll just let all of the adventure stuff take care of itself in pursuit of achieving that goal. I've got a ways to go. All right. I've only been to Nigeria, for example, in West Africa. So there's that. I'm a photographer by training. I mean, I have an undergraduate fine arts degree, a BFA in photography from the Rhode Island School of Design. And if you go through and look at the pictures that I publish, you will almost never see me in the places, right? It is always about the place, the people that I see in those places and what I see around me. I almost never turn the camera back on myself, right? And this is, going back to 2003, I mean, the trip to Ecuador, I mean, I had to struggle to find a photograph that included me, and you took it, right? Right. And so I am acutely aware, for example, right, that I want to be a part of the experience, not an observer of the experience. And this goes way back to my first return trip to New Zealand. I lived there from 73 to 76, and I returned in 89. And I remember having this experience where on a bus, there's a bunch of tourists. They go out and they turn their backs to the landscape. And one member of the group takes pictures of everybody to prove that they were there. But that robbed them of the experience of being there and being in the moment. And I have taken that as a part of what it is that I'm doing. As I record the places that I go, the experiences that I have, it's not about me. It's never been about me. And that's how I would answer your question to the Instagramification of things. That if you always have a camera in front of you and you're always thinking about, oh, this will make I'll get 20,000 likes on this post, right?
I guess the other part of what I mean, though, in my question is, do you see a sort of, I mean, now when I go stay in places in the developing world, even the hotels that are, $20 a night are kind of like an extended stay in Dallas. I mean, it's not like any different. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of, it seems as though everything has kind of been, it's vanilla, you know, and so there's a Wi-Fi connection everywhere you go. It doesn't seem that hard anymore to get from place to place. And it's kind of taken some of the adventure out of it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Go to Cross River State in Nigeria, and I might disabuse you of some of those notions in the modern day. So
that's probably true.
So, I think, but, I remember being for the first time in, my second visit, being in Bolivia in 2010 with Volker Lehmann, and going into this town in what now think of as the Upper Beni, where a lot of the cocoa comes from. And the hotel was atrocious, right? And I've been to places that are like that everywhere I've been, right? So we were fortunate when we went to Ecuador, right? We went to an eco lodge, which was a really upscale, amazing kind of place. When I went to Ecuador in 2003, we went to an eco lodge, right? So it was part of that experience. Mm-hmm. But I remember, and I think it was our visit in 2005, we went to Naranjal, right, where we went to visit a cooperative.
Yep.
And you're just driving past the homes that all of these people live in, and you go, oh my gosh, right? What is this? Mm-hmm. What is this about? And I've been to those kinds of places, but I've been to hotels, right, or places of lodging, right, in many parts of the world. And one of the things that happens when there is a culture like the American culture that people can see on television and they can see in lots of other places, that there is a sort of Disneyfication that happens, right? And I think what you're reacting to is that Disneyfication. Right?
Yes.
For me, I'm going to go to some place and I want comida típica y criolla. I mean, I want typical native food, and I want to go to places. So if I'm on, the edge of the Beni River, in Bolivia, and there is piranha on a menu, I'm going to try the piranha on the menu.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I do the same thing. Yeah.
And not every, and so again, from my Bolivia trip in 2010, one of the things trips I did was there twice in 2010, is that I had this epiphany that what I thought I know about cocoa culture in Ecuador, right, didn't apply to what I knew about Bolivia, right? And I couldn't take anything. So I needed to search for what was different and what was the same, and then understand that, this thing that I learned from being in Ecuador doesn't apply here. And I just need to put it away and be open to what it is that I'm listening. And, that goes back to that first trip we're in Mexico, and then 2 days later, we're in Venezuela. They're both Spanish speaking nations. They're, not that far apart from each other in geographic terms, even though we had to go all the way around to get there. And they're both really important, right? So Barlovento and Choconusco are very important places for cocoa in the region. And even though they have a shared language and there is some shared culture, they're entirely different places. And if you went to Venezuela expecting it to work like Mexico, you're going to fail. If you went back to Mexico expecting it to work like Venezuela, you're going to fail. And I think, so, when I think about, the Chocolate University and the people who went to Tanzania, for many of them, this might have been the first time they've been out of the state of Missouri.
Absolutely.
In their entire life.
Sometimes first plane ride.
Yeah. Yeah. I had my first international trip when I was 14, when we moved to New Zealand, and got a chance to visit Hawaii and Fiji on the way over there. So it was, it was an extended immersion into that. And I think that there's a tendency, if you don't have that set of experiences, to impose what you know onto everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yep.
the lessons learned. I mean, you're sitting here in an internet cafe in Rio Chico, right? In Miranda State, in Venezuela, right? And you're trying to call home just to check in with Karen, to check in and let everybody know that you're safe. Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're sitting here. This is after you've made the connection. Right. And,
Yep.
you know, there's relief on your face. They know you're safe. You know, they're safe. Everything is okay. And that moment, right? Those personal moments when I travel, that's what I want to hold on to. It's not that I've been to a museum. It's not
Right.
that I've been to some other place. It's not that I've been to some fancy place. It's just connecting
Yep.
with someone. And I think, you know, that's,
Absolutely.
I think about, you know, this picture in particular, right? So we're at the church, which is run by the pastor, that we're at a service, and you've been, you know, taking pictures of people. Here you are with one of Diego's kids, maybe you're taking photographs of them and you're sharing. You know, this is an intimate moment, right? And when you say it's all about the chocolate, but it's not about the chocolate, or it's not about the chocolate, it's all about the chocolate. I think about moments like this, right, as reasons why I continue to do what it is that I do. I want to be a part of these stories. I want to tell these stories. I want to hear these stories get told to me. I want to share them with people to understand that behind, you know, every bar of chocolate that they consume, there are families that are involved in working with the raw ingredient. And these families live in communities, right? And these communities need to be healthy and thriving, right, in order for us to be able to enjoy what it is that we're doing. And these lessons that I learned from you on this trip, right, are ones that have been filtering through everything that I've done, and since then. So it's a mutual pleasure. I do want to, you know, we are at the hour. We haven't had a whole bunch of questions from people. I don't know what that means. Maybe they're just enjoying what it is they have to say and don't want to interrupt. But Shawn, I got one question. You know, after we got back from this trip to Venezuela, and after you got beans in, and after you got the factory up and running, we started interacting. I'm tasting some of the early chocolate. I'm working on your packaging, which has got the same basic format now. It's that wax paper envelope, which is closed with a bit of sisal from a jute bag from the beans. I mean, maybe you've got a different source for the jute than you did back then. But originally there was a vellum paper insert wrapped around the bar, right? Which is no longer there the last time I bought one of yours. But are you still using the CHOCOLAT numbers at the top?
No. We stopped doing that probably about 10 years ago. Nobody was logging in and looking at it. And so, and there's quite a tracking requirement now that the FDA has that started in 2011 with the Food Safety Modernization Act. So we have a pretty elaborate tracking system that's for us to use internally, and not that number anymore. But those were the good old days.
You know, it's fun to see how ideas come about, how they live their life, right? And when circumstances change, they lose their usefulness. But it was fun, you know, CHOC-O-LOT as a pun on chocolate was something that was fun. Shawn, we're over the hour. I'm going to give you the next to last things. What's next for Askinosie Chocolate?
What's next is as soon as I hang up here, I'm going to run to the chocolate factory and greet some University of Missouri Business School students who are there right now. And I'm going to do the last 20 minutes of their tour and talk with them about direct trade and international trade. That's what's next. And you know, I should also say that I live in Austin, Texas, part-time. My daughter is there. She's our chief marketing officer and runs the company with me and has been with me since, you know, half of her life. And, but she has a 5-year-old daughter named Goldie and a 2-year-old son named Cardinal. And I absolutely love spending time with them, and that's what I'll do next. I'll be there Wednesday, and Karen and I will have them over to our house in Austin for 2 nights next weekend. And that's what fills me up. So that wasn't directly your question, but that's my answer.
That's fine. We have one final comment. May find my local coffee of choice interesting as it shares some similarities with Askinosie, Roswell, land of 1,000 hills coffee.
Oh,
right. So there's a Google share link, which might be a map link. Land of 1,000 hills, and he sent it again. So we're gonna go there anyway. But absolutely, we'll go take a look at those things. Shawn will share them. All right. Before we leave, I just want to remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. Here's the homepage right now. Here is the link for today's post on the Chocolate Life. You can find all kinds of resources, links to photo blogs, links to other times, Shawn, you and I have spoken on the Chocolate Life, other articles that I've written, but also you can join the Chocolate Life, right? There's always a free membership, right? But if you do have the financial resources to support the work that I'm doing for as little as $5 a month or $42 a year, yes, I am a Douglas Adams fan. 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, or right. But I appreciate the support. And Shawn, until the next time, hopefully we're both around 20 years from now. Maybe we'll check in sooner than 20 years from now.
I hope so.
To do this again. And, perhaps there's going to be an opportunity in the future when I can join you on a chocolate university trip to Tanzania. Right. And join with you in the Philippines. Yeah, I would like to figure out a way to make it happen. And until then, everybody, I do want to remind you, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And join us this coming Tuesday, where we're going to be announcing the winners of the 2026 Craft Chocolate Challenge. Until then, everybody, ciao and have a great weekend. Shawn, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being who you are, Clay.
Thank you.